Hey guys, Stockaholics, thank you guys for being here today. I wanted to make a video talking today a little bit about Russian stocks. Those of you guys that have followed this channel for a while may know that I had been involved in a company called Gazprom and a company called Lukoil, two Russian oil and gas stocks. To say the least, the situation with these companies and Russian stocks in general has gotten rather complicated, especially as a foreign investor in this space. I wanted to talk about three main ideas, I think, in this video. First one is probably going to be about morality, I guess, in investing, because unfortunately, although this is a finance channel, I feel like that it is something that probably needs to be said. Number two, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on with these companies and Russian stocks in general, especially if you own ADRs. Talk a little bit about that. And then last, I wanted to go through, I guess, a brief timeline on what I did since the Russian invasion with these companies, and I guess my thought process as I was making those decisions. The goal, I think, with this video is hopefully that somebody can learn something. Okay, here we go. Okay, briefly, I wanted to talk about morality, I guess, in this situation. First of all, I guess it goes without saying that I don't support the war. I wish everybody would put their guns down. I have a natural inclination to support the side that's getting bullied. Kind of hope Ukraine wins. Obviously, Russians here are the aggressor. And everything I'm talking about here, I should hope that it doesn't undermine all of the human suffering that is currently taking place over there. Okay. Now, recently I took a poll on Twitter and I asked the simple question and that was, do you think that it's immoral to invest in Russia? And 45% of people responded that they thought that it is immoral to invest in Russia. Recently, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and in his mind, investing in Russia is the equivalent of a war crime. So there's a lot of emotion with this topic. And, you know, I hope everybody out there can make the decisions that are best for them, okay? Nobody has to invest in Russia. But I kind of take the other side on that. And you feel free to let me know what a jackass I am in the comments below. But I'm going to kind of try and explain my logic behind this. Okay, so the companies that I own are companies. They do not go out. They do not shell kids. They do not. They're not responsible for the invasion that is currently taking place. That would be the government of Russia and their army, right? That's currently attacking Ukraine. You can make the case, well, you know, that might be true, but the tax revenues from these companies, they go to support that government. If you're owning these shares, you're indirectly supporting the government. My country, where I come from, the United States, if I were to have that kind of a logic, I would not be able to make money, period, investing, because my country has been invading people for as long as I've been alive. I think in 2003, we invaded Iraq. About 1 million people died over there. That's like saying that I should not have been investing in a company like, you know, let's say Apple or, you know, Coca-Cola, because these are American companies. They may have nothing to do with the wars that the US is responsible for, but their tax revenue goes to support the government, which causes all of these wars, right? And if all of that were true, you know, there's no way that I could invest, period, because no matter where I go in the world, at some point, there's probably going to be some kind of a conflict or some kind of a decision that's going to be immoral. This is kind of my framework. This is kind of how I see things. I think the conflicts are inevitable. In high school, we had to learn about, I live in Hawaii, and we had to learn about Hawaiian civilization pre-contact. That's pre-contact with the West. And we learned about these Hawaiian gods. One of the gods that the Hawaiians had was Ku, and he's the god of war. And one of the other gods is Lono, and he's the god of peace. And I remember learning about these, and I also remember that they every so often they had a celebration. I don't remember what the celebration was called, but it was a time of the year that you were expected to no longer be at war, whatever the conditions were. It's a time, it's a certain period of peace. And I remember thinking about that as a kid, and I was like, wow, that's stupid. Like, that trivializes any reasons that you could be having a conflict for. But, you know, the older I get, the more I was like, you know, these kinds of things, they make more and more sense because conflict is inherent to the species. No matter where I go, at some point in the future, you know, there's probably going to be some kind of a conflict that's taking place between someone. And, you know, I could go out today and I could invest in, you know, Germany, for example. But what Germany is also doing is they are also going and funding the war effort in Ukraine, right? So they're also contributing to this kind of conflict, right? So my logic is that, you know, yeah, it sucks what's going on. I wish it wasn't happening, but I can't control it. I'm just one guy. And me investing in different places, if I'm trying to avoid immoral decisions that different governments do, I'll never be able to make money. So that's my logic. And let me know what you think about it. If it's stupid, feel free to let me know in the comments. Okay, I wanted to give a timeline on these investments and what I did with these investments at different times. Now, before Russian invasion, you had you still do, you have a Russian stock market where you have Russian companies listed there, but you also have these depository receipts trading all over the world for these companies, right? And for the most part, you know, there might be, you know, some slight currency fluctuations in these shares between the ADRs and the exchange, but for the most part, they trade at what the Moscow exchange is trading for, right? Now, I had first purchased Lukoil Gazprom at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. These companies had sold off dramatically, and the logic behind purchasing was like, hey, oil price is low now, but oil price leads to, or low oil price leads to high oil price in the future. I was like, hey, you know, I also think there might be a commodities bull market coming. I can purchase these companies now, hold them, collect dramatic dividends over time. I think when I purchased Lukoil, the dividend yield was like 11%. So this is an investment. I was being paid to own it, right? That quickly changed the first couple of days of the invasion. I don't remember what day, but a couple of days into the invasion, there were all kinds of, you know, economic sanctions coming from the West. Russia retaliated. One of the ways they retaliated, I think, was to say, hey, you know what, we're not going to pay out foreign holders of our companies any dividends. So that instantly changed these investments into speculations. And I was panicked the first couple of days because I was like, okay, well, I did not think that that was going to happen, but it did. And I was like, maybe I should just sell, maybe just cut my losses and get out of here. But I didn't. I was like, I don't like making emotional decisions. I want to think about this for a little bit, right? Now, a few days into the invasion, the Moscow exchange closed. But you had a weird dynamic, because the exchange was closed, but all of the depository receipts that were being traded all over the world, they were still trading. And those shares were in just massive panic mode. And I don't know, you guys know, I mean, I'm a little bit of a contrarian. When I see this panic, I was like, whoa, if these shares are worth something, they're worth far, far, far more, most likely, than what they are trading at, right? You know, I saw first couple of days, Lukoil went down, you know, to 40. A few days after that, 20. At some point during that, all of the craziness, Lukoil, I know on the British exchange or London exchange, was trading at 72 cents a share. So if this, I was looking at all this as like, if these companies have value, the upside here is just insane, right? And so I thought about it, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to sell. Instead, I am going to be buying these because they may be worth nothing. The West may, in the East, in Russia, they may, you know, up their game. I may get, you know, frozen forever. But if they are worth something, they're worth so much more than what they're trading at that I had to take a stab. So I think when I had bought a little Lukoil first couple of days, and then when it got down to $20 a share, I basically tripled my position. And then I think the last day, when it stopped trading, I got a little bit of it around 9. So I think my average for Lukoil, it's like the high 20s compared to somewhere around there, or mid 20s on all of the exchange or the brokers that I have. That was another thing too. It's a very good thing that I had multiple brokerages, because on some brokerages they were no longer allowing you to buy it, where they were only allowing you to sell it, and some of them they were letting you buy and sell, and there was all kinds of things that were happening too. But you know, ultimately I said, I gotta take the stab at this. But there was a second part of that too, because I was like, okay, if these are worth nothing, let's say that they're not worth anything, is there something that I can do to still make money on this? And then I thought about it, and I was like, I followed the tanker space, I followed oil and gas and all of these other things, and I was like, okay, if these Russian shares are worth nothing, that means that there's probably going to be an escalation in the sanctions, in this economic warfare. And that means that all of these other companies, the disruptions and all of that taking place too, that means that these guys are going to do tremendous. They're probably going to be doubles and triples too, especially a lot of these highly leveraged tanker companies, right? And so I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put half of this investment into Lukoil, and I'm going to put the other half into all of these other oil companies and tankers that I had already been investing in. And again, the logic there is like, this is going to be worth tremendously more, or this is going to be worth tremendously more. It's going to, and I guess the idea was that, you know, hopefully I wouldn't on this pair trade lose money. And I'm sure there's still ways that I could, but that was ultimately what I decided to do. And I guess we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. Now, there's still a lot of craziness happening. If you go and read all of these stock forums and things along those lines, there's a lot of just guessing on what's going to happen or what's happening with these depository receipts. And the short answer is as it is still now, nobody really knows what's going on with all of this. I've seen all these people contacting their brokers. The brokers are basically saying, yeah, we don't know, man. Like, they're still frozen. Nobody knows, right? So I wanted to kind of talk about a couple of points on all of this kind of thing, right? Now, first of all, depository receipts, right? What are depository receipts? Depository receipts are basically a receipt, and it says, okay, this represents shares that you own on the Moscow exchange. The depository receipts, it can be a 1-to-1 ratio. I think that's what the case is for Lukoil, but that receipt could represent multiple shares on the Moscow exchange too. So under normal circumstances, if you were so inclined, an investor could take that slip, that receipt, and trade it for a share on the Moscow exchange, right? However, not all brokerages in the United States have direct access to the exchange. However, I think that you could do this on a broker like Interactive Brokers. And by the way, I think you can still purchase, I'm not 100% sure on this, I think you could purchase shares on the Moscow exchange directly right now using that broker. But that price disparity that we had in the DRs doesn't exist the same way that it exists on the Moscow exchange. That exchange never collapsed. I think Lukoil right now is trading at about $60 a share, right? So yeah. Now it gets complicated. Recently, the Russian Duma, that's kind of like their parliament, they basically said, we're not doing this DR thing anymore. They passed a law that says these are canceled. So what they're basically saying is those receipts, we're taking all those, but you're going to get a Russian share now in exchange, right? And it gets weird because, okay, well, my broker doesn't have access to the Russian stock market. I can't really, I can't really do anything with that share. Now what, right? Does that mean I'm going to get that share? Does it mean it's going to be in my broker? Maybe I can now get that in there and then transfer that to Interactive Brokers if I wanted to sell it. And what is it? What does that mean, right? And again, nobody really knows, right? And there's another layer to this too, because these depository receipts, they're sponsored by someone. So the depository receipts, I think in the case of Lukoil, they're sponsored by Citibank. Basically, Citibank is like the intermediary between these receipts and the Russian stock market, right? So what does that mean? If you're canceling, is it going to go to Citi and then Citi is going to decide what to do with them? Or is Citi going to sell those by pressure from the government, or what? Are we going to get those shares? Are we going to get a sellout from the sponsor? There's so many swirling questions. It's a lot of I don't know, right? So it's really just still very much a waiting game, but and hopefully people that have purchased these, if you're watching this, hopefully you're expecting to hold these for a while, because it doesn't seem that there's going to be a resolution for this anytime soon. But hopefully that information was somewhat helpful. Oh, and one more thing. Even if you can get those hold of those Russian shares, at this point it doesn't really matter anyway, because you can't really sell them. Foreigners are still locked out from selling on the Russian exchange, right? So again, it's still just very much wait and see.